Well, hey everybody, and welcome to our 32nd Sunday of Ordinary Time behind the pulpit, November 8th, 2015. And we're back here in the pastor's dungeon. It's a little hard to put together a behind the pulpit episode with my robes and my vestments and all that sort of thing when you consider the gospel lesson that we're going to be looking at today. And so I thought, well, it's only appropriate that I come to you today from more of a humble position, I guess you could say, one in which I don't have all sorts of fancy things behind me, but just telling you what we're doing for worship and as we prepare ourselves for God. And so we are going to be looking at the gospel lesson in Mark. It's kind of a two-parter, but it opens up with talking about scribes with long robes and long prayers. And then Jesus sitting across the street from the treasury and noticing a poor widow who leaves. Now, King James will say two mites. It's actually, that's not a term for those coins. It would have been two lepton, actually. But kind of talking about how she gives from her poverty while everyone else gives from abundance. And so I thought, well, it's only appropriate that this week I come to you without a robe, with a shirt that's a little frayed, and one that I wear quite often. I've had it for years and years, and in the whole this office, as we call them that, in the pastor's office down here, with all the pipes and everything exposed, but just reminding that it's not about appearances, but about what we share. But we begin our worship this Sunday with We Bring the Sacrifice of Praise, which is wonderful. It really ties in really well with our lesson this Sunday. And the lyrics have been in our insert, and I've heard some of you singing along, and the choir would encourage you to keep singing with that. But our opening psalm is Psalm 127, which is a great psalm, which talks about building and guarding and working, that if we don't do that with the Lord in place, then it's all for vain. And it's a wonderful call to worship, Psalm 127, because I'm not sure why we do this. Well, I have some guesses. But it seems that we're willing to give God everything and have God involved in everything, except when it comes to building a house, building a home, and our money. It's really funny that we think that the rules apply to us differently when it comes to our money than everything else that God teaches us about giving and that sort of thing. That we're willing to we'd rather forgive somebody than to give them our money because we think somehow we own that. And yet here we are in Psalm 127 that tells us in those day-to-day things that we do of guarding our home, of building a house, of working and resting, that unless the Lord God is involved with that, it's all for vain. And so our opening hymn is Happy the Home When God is There. And it's just a reminder that in everything we do, in our private and our public life, with our money, with our meals, with our relationships, it all connects and should rightly be with God. So that's why our responsive reading is a meditation on Christian giving, and that our hymn of confession is the Spirit of God descend upon my heart. And so the idea here is that a lot of times a lot of us get upset with our money, or think that we have control over things with our money, and that this is just a reminder of why we give. I think people give for different reasons. I think sometimes people give as a form of judgment or punishment. I think sometimes people give so they feel like that they have some control or say into something. I know that happens a lot when people disagree with church, where they'll say things like, I'm going to take away my tithe because I don't like what you guys are doing, or what the church is doing, or what PCUSA is doing. And by doing that, you completely miss the purpose, or we completely miss the purpose of what giving is really all about. That's about gratitude to God. And so that's why our hymn of confession is Spirit of God descend upon my heart. In other words, please help us to see the world as you want us to see it, not as we want to, especially when it comes to our money. And so that leads us to our gospel reading, and Jesus talks about giving from a place of poverty, and it's a wonderful lesson about what giving is really about, in that God, quite more often than not, will honor and bless givers. That regardless of what somebody does with the gift that you give, regardless of what happens with it, God honors the sacrifice of giving that's given, and recognizes that though on the outside it looks like somebody may not be giving much, if he knows that if you're giving from a place of poverty, in other words, you're giving to God for gratitude from a place when you don't have that much, that he honors that. And I think it goes beyond, and that's what we'll be talking about in the scriptures. It goes beyond just money. So God recognizes and blesses those who give time when they have no time, who give energy when they have no energy, who give help to those who are sick when they are sick themselves, or in this case, a woman who gives 2 essentially little pennies because that's all she has, and that God honors that, not the amount that we see on the surface, but what's actually in their heart, and knowing what that situation as well. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And our closing hymn to tie in with that, which I think is a really important one for us to keep in mind, is that we give thee but thine own. We love in America to talk about my money. I earned this money. This is my money. It's my money by right. To which we are reminded by God that all that we have comes from him, including our money. So when we give, we're only giving a portion of what already belongs to God. In fact, if you want to go with the whole 10% tithe kind of approach, God demands even less than most of us pay in our taxes to the government. So I don't know about you. It's a pretty good deal that when God says, here, I have all this to give to you, I only ask like 10%. And let me ask you this. No matter how much money that we give to God, he doesn't need the money. God doesn't need the money. So it's not about giving money to God. It's about honoring God and giving him what's already his. And that includes our money, our time, our hearts, our intellect, our imagination, all that we are. And so to give back to him is to say thank you. Well, I look forward to seeing you all this Sunday in this humble abode. I didn't feel right to speak to you with a long flowing robe for this behind the pulpit. So I will see you all this Sunday. Thank you, and God bless.